Alright, little goblins, Journeys Through the Radiant Citadel just landed at my doorstep today, so I'm going to give you my first impressions of it. Many thanks to Wizards of the Coast for sending it to us to review. Now, Journeys Through the Radiant Citadel is a collection of standalone short adventures along the lines of Candlekeep mysteries. Just like all the adventures in that book tied back to Candlekeep, the legendary library fortress along the Sword Coast, the adventures here ostensibly tie to the Radiant Citadel, a crossroads for multiverse travelers located in the ethereal plane. The adventures here span levels 1 through 14, and it's really designed for two purposes. You can run the adventures as standalone one-shots, or you can pick and choose from the included adventures and tie them into your ongoing campaigns, as they're designed to be rather setting agnostic. So it's a bit like the Epic Encounter boxes or the Big Bad booklets, two things that our little goblins here know pretty well. This video will be pretty light on the spoilers, but I am going to talk a bit about each adventure so you'll know what to expect. Now, in my eyes, recent D&D books have been a mixed bag. I was really impressed with what they put together in Call of the Netherdeep. It was an interesting and creative story in a varied and fun campaign that introduced several innovations that made it all feel really fresh. You can see our review of it up in the corner there. But I was a bit disappointed in Wild Beyond the Witchlight and Strixhaven. Wild Beyond the Witchlight had a fun core setting and some great NPCs and moments, but it really lacked any kind of coherent and engaging plot. And there really wasn't enough lore to make the setting and the new races feel real and substantial. It was an adventure in which you had to do a lot of heavy lifting to write your own central story as the game master and give the characters motivation to keep moving. And Strixhaven, again, had a really fun setting, lots of pretty robust NPCs for your players to care about, but the included story was really formulaic and just not particularly exciting. So let's see if Journeys to the Radiant Citadel brings anything new to the table. Before we jump in, let me thank our sponsors for this video. First, Humblewood Tales from Hit Point Press, which is on Kickstarter right now. We'll talk more about that a little bit later. And also DScryb, or DScryb, a fantastic tool for both game masters and players. Our games are all about storytelling, and while Radiant Citadel and other adventures give us a plot and characters and settings, it's up to you to tell the story of your adventuring party at your table. And most of us don't have a professional writing background. DScryb is like having a team of writers at your back. They have box text that you can use and adapt for all sorts of settings, monsters, actions players can use in combat, spells, magical items, important story moments, and more. Just thinking about Radiant Citadel here, DScryb has descriptions of arriving in the ethereal plane, traveling across it, opening portals to other realms, and so much more. And you can even submit your own character or an important upcoming moment in your campaign to have professional writers word it in a way that will enhance your story and ensure that your players will never forget it. You can use our link below the video and the discount code GALLANTGOBLIN, all one word, to get 10% off your first subscription payment, whether that be monthly or yearly. And that's DScryb. Go check it out. Now, here is the table of contents for this book. We start off with a gazetteer to the Radiant Citadel itself, then we have our 13 adventures, and a small section about lands connected to the Radiant Citadel. 11 new character stat blocks or creature stat blocks are sprinkled in along the way. There's not much in the way of new mechanical character options or magic items or spells or anything like that. This is pretty much just a collection of new settings and adventures. This book attempts to expand the reach of where D&D draws its inspiration from. Most of the D&D lore, like the monsters and the stories, come from Western European mythology. The stories here try to go beyond that, and there are some useful tips in the beginning of the book on how to portray those cultures with respect. One thing that surprised me a bit is that they speak directly to people who stream their games online. They warn them about some common mistakes people might make with costuming or accents or stereotypical representations of cultures that aren't their own. It's all useful information, but it makes me wonder, like, what percentage of people are streaming their games online these days? But it's good advice to follow whether your games are on Twitch or not. Now, the Radiant Citadel itself gets a nice setting guide. It was forged when 27 disparate civilizations came together to forge a neutral ground that could serve as a hub of diplomacy and trade. Or, to paraphrase another description, The Radiant Citadel was a dream given form. Its goal to prevent another war by creating a place where civilizations can work out their differences peacefully. It's a port of call, home away from home for diplomats, hustlers, entrepreneurs, and wanderers. Humanoids and aliens on a massive, ancient fossil snaked around a colossal diamond, all alone in the mists. It can be a dangerous place, but it's our last best hope for peace. There's enough of a setting guide here to run some stories of your own creation in the Radiant Citadel, but none of the adventures included really have anything to do with it. It's designed to be a hub to adventure, and anything else you want to do with it is left up to you. There really is no link between the adventures in this book that I've seen, and I think you can run any of the adventures here without even mentioning the Citadel itself. I'm going to make a companion video to this one going over the 5 adventures in this book that are most exciting to me, but let me just give you an overview of all of them here. One nice thing is that each adventure has its own setting, and each chapter gives you a short gazetteer about that location, information about creating characters from there, and some plot hooks if you want to explore it more thoroughly. Now, I'm going to do my level best to identify the real-world origins of the stories in here, but I've only had a few hours with the book, and nothing about the origins of the stories is explicitly laid out in here, even though that would have been really interesting to read. So feel free to correct me or provide more detail in the comments if I misidentify or overly generalize anything. So let me give you a taste of each adventure and then I'll tell you my thoughts. Starting off with Salted Legacy for first level characters, and it takes place in a South Asian inspired sprawling market. The heroes must navigate a rivalry between 2 rival merchant families by conducting an investigation, but first they must make a name for themselves by participating in some market mini-games. It also introduces this little cutie here, the Windling, a little fey trickster that takes center stage on the cover of the book here. And Written in Blood is set in the African-inspired region known as God's Breath. Several, maybe most of the adventures in this book feature festivals, and Written in Blood starts with the annual Awakening Festival, featuring lots of storytelling and memorials. Unfortunately, this year the festival is marred by a magical malady that's turning folks violent. The characters have to venture out into the Badlands outside of town to investigate the origins of the plague. The Fiend of Hollow Mind features a Day of the Dead-inspired festival in a city called San Seatlan, which sits at a confluence of ley lines, making the barriers between the realms thin. And a bit like the last adventure, a malady is sweeping the town, cursing those who catch it. Stories say it is spread by a bitterly cold wind. This particular curse seems to have a fiendish tint to it, and of course, the heroes have to go investigate it and find a way to stop it. Wages of Vice is set in the African-inspired city of Zinda, a metropolitan area of great marble towers and universities and rich culture. This adventure features the summer festival called the March of Vice, celebrating the town's wine trade, so you know this festival is going to be a good time. Except for our heroes, who immediately upon entering town discover a dead body tucked away into an alleyway and are mistakenly identified as the murderers by some guards who walk by. Now, once the heroes make short work of those guards, they're then hired by a local noble who kind of sees all this to investigate the murder. That all seems like a little fishy setup to me, but let's just go with it. The heroes will navigate the ruling structure of the city amid this summer wine festival to try to uncover whatever the nefarious plot is underneath. Sins of the Elders takes place in the Korean-inspired city of Yeonmi-do, a city besieged by a mysterious fog that's messing with people's memories. This one is a ghost story, and there's another festival. This book should have just been called Journeys Through Every Festival. This one, though, is the Don Na Harvest Festival. In this adventure, the heroes have to learn the local cultural traditions and the history of the city in order to figure out what this ghostly haunt is all about and put it to rest. Next on the list is Gold for Fools and Princes for 7th level characters in the Arabic-inspired city-state of Anissa. No festival this time, only a mine collapse that the heroes are asked to help out with. But it's not just a rescue mission. The heroes have to also deal with 2 rival princes who are trying to turn the catastrophe to their advantage, and the collapse may have unleashed a mythical creature long thought extinct. Trial of Destruction takes place in the volcanic region known as Tletepec, which is inspired by Mexican and Aztec mythology. The region is experiencing more seismic activity and fiery monster attacks than usual, and the party is asked to follow up on a group of warriors who were sent out to a research facility and a shrine to investigate what was going on, and they never came back. They have to do research in the town and then travel across the Broken Lands to that observatory and shrine to see what trouble is really brewing. Next up is In the Mist of Moniversha, a Indian-inspired adventure set in the forested swampland island city of Sugarpore, in a region protected by sapient but capricious river spirits. The spirits are appeased through an event known as the Shanka Trials. Not a festival exactly, but a sporting competition. Close enough. The heroes really do bring an Angela Lansbury level of trouble to every festival event that they attend, as this one is set upon by a tsunami. The heroes have to help with a disaster and then uncover what caused it. At 10th level, we have Between Tangled Roots, based on the Filipino legend of the Bakunawa serpent dragon. In this adventure, a town called Kalapung is attacked by a sacred dragon that's always protected the people of the land in the past, but disappeared about 200 years ago. Clearly, there is something wrong with the dragon, so the heroes must go and find a way to stop its attacks, while also contending with a faction who wants to kill it. Shadow of the Sun is our 11th level adventure, and it involves a creature attacking a festival. This one takes place in the Persian-inspired city of Akarin Sangar. There we go. The city is ruled by an angel and his holy Bright Guard soldiers, but recently anarchists calling themselves the Ashen Heirs have been fomenting rebellion. Another, more peaceful but equally rebellious group known as the Silent Roar also wants to overthrow the isolationist angel and his regime. The heroes in this adventure have the option of joining up with the Bright Guard or with the Silent Roar to determine the future of the city. Our next adventure is The Night Sees Sakor, based on African folklore. The heroes are haunted by the restless spirits of folks long ago taken from their homes and families and then lost at sea. They carried with them important tomes detailing local traditions, and now the remains of the spirits and those tomes have been disturbed by something sinister at the bottom of the sea. The heroes end up traveling to the phantasmagoric realm under the waves to investigate. At 13th level, we have Buried Destiny, based on Chinese folklore. And this one is hard to describe without getting too spoilery, so let's just say that the heroes are hired by a member of the ruling government to accompany her hand-picked scholar into the ruins of an old palace to discover relics of an old empire. So it's a bit of an old-fashioned dungeon dive, but there is more going on here than meets the eye. And finally, our last adventure is Orchids of the Invisible Mountain. This one is based on Venezuelan culture. The land of Atagua exists at a place where the barriers between the plains are weak. A little bit of the Feywild seeps through on occasion, but lately, corruption from the far realm has started to corrupt the savannah. The adventure here is a bit more surreal and involves some plane hopping and some pretty intense encounters. Okay, so at first glance, I have a few thoughts. There are certainly some fun-looking adventures here that have caught my eye. I don't know that I'd want to run all of them, but some of them seem really intriguing, and I love that we're drawing inspiration from different cultures, which should give us a wider variety of experiences, of monsters to fight, of stories to tell. It's a little unfortunate that so many adventures revolve around trouble at a festival, but in my first glance through, each adventure certainly had its own flavor and theme. I think one-off stories like these inherently make the PCs supporting characters in other people's stories, unless the game master does some heavy lifting so they're not just hired to solve other people's problems for money. Many of the stories here will benefit from just dropping that Radiant Citadel component entirely and having the players make their PCs from each of these individual settings for each story, so they'd hopefully be more invested in what happens there. And happily, each chapter does give you guidance on how to make those characters. There are a series of questions for each location that players can answer to help more firmly establish our characters' ties into that land. I do think I'd be more invested in this book if it didn't feel quite so much like a one-off. This book introduces so many new settings, like really cool, well-developed settings, and I kind of doubt we will ever hear anything about most of them ever again. I know that gives the authors carte blanche to tell the stories they want to tell, and that's fantastic, but it would land harder if they firmly place these settings into the Forgotten Realms so they can be referenced in future adventures more easily. So what happens in these adventures might affect future storytelling. And I know they want to make these adventures setting agnostic, but you can set it in the Forgotten Realms and still give guidance on moving the location to Dragonlance or Eberron or the Domains of Dread or Greyhawk or wherever you like. Now, if they did place them into the Forgotten Realms, we'd have to revisit some areas that were designed at a time where cultural sensitivity wasn't exactly a guiding principle. But this would have been a chance to start rebuilding certain areas to correct the mistakes of the past. You might be hamstringing the authors with some old lore, but I'm sure they could handle it. Now, one thing I wish Wizards of the Coast could do better is highlighting that creative talent. Candlekeep Mysteries made some progress here by listing the writers, developers, and editors for each adventure at the beginning of that particular adventure. If you liked a particular story, you could look up other adventures by those people. All of that is gone in Radiant Citadel. Aside from the credits page at the beginning of the book, there is no mention of any writer, editor, or artist in the whole rest of the book, at least that I saw. For books like this, which have such personal adventures focused on presumably the author's own cultural knowledge and experiences, I think it would have been awesome to have at least a sidebar for the main author of each story telling us just a little bit about them. Now, I believe there are a series of blog articles and videos doing some of that work, but nothing quite beats the immortality of having them in this book, which is going to have way more eyes on it in 5, 10, 15 years than any marketing blog published last month. And as you've probably been watching this, I've been putting together my list of top 5 adventures in this book that I'm most excited to run. Those are the ones that I'm going to go into more detail on in that next video, so be sure you're subscribed so you don't miss that. Journeys Through the Radiant Citadel will be available on July 19th. The standard art here is done by Evan Fong. The alternate cover here was designed by Shiza Hong, and it will be available at game stores around the world. Don't forget to check out DScryb to get that team of professional writers on your side to help with your storytelling, and be sure to check out the Humblewood Tales Kickstarter going on now by our friends at Hit Point Press. If you're looking for more whimsical and engaging stories for your 5e games, Humblewood Tales brings you more than 200 pages expanding the lore of Humblewood. You'll learn more about the central tree city of Alderheart, and you'll get 5 new adventures that'll take your party from 3rd to 8th level. You'll encounter pirate mercenaries, face off against a slime king, search for creatures of legend in the woods, investigate rumors of a young Gerbine who seems to have developed powers, and take on the Amaranthine Kryn in a nightmarish dreamscape, and more. And of course, there are some gorgeous new minis. Humblewood Tales is available as a book, box set, and a Kickstarter exclusive collector's edition. Check it out at the link in the corner of your screen or in the doohickey down below before it's too late. That is Humblewood Tales by Hit Point Press. I'm about to head out of town to visit my mom, but we have quite a few videos filmed and being edited as you watch this, so you're not even going to notice that I'm gone. I am bringing Radiant Citadel with me, and I'll try to do some live Q&A sessions from my hotels if I have the time. Hopefully I won't catch COVID and have lots of time for Q&A sessions. I'll do those on Instagram and Facebook, so be sure you're following us there to see those. You can tweet us any questions you have directly to me, or you can chat about it with me and everything else on our Discord server. The link to that is right down below. For now, though, thanks for watching. Take care, have fun, love each other, and I will see you next time at the Gallant Goblin.